Мы неоднократно предлагали шаги по прекращению огня. Никогда не отказывались от диалога с украинской стороной. Напомню еще раз, не мы прервали переговоры в 2022 году. Это сделала украинская сторона. В этой связи, несмотря ни на что, предлагаем киевским властям возобновить переговоры, прерванные ими в конце 2022 года. Возобновить прямые переговоры, причем, подчеркну, без всяких предварительных условий. Начать предлагаем без промедления уже в следующий четверг, 15 мая, в Стамбуле, там, где они проводились ранее и там, где они были прерваны. Как известно, турецкие коллеги неоднократно предлагали свои услуги по организации подобных переговоров. И президент Эрдоган очень многое сделал для их организации. Напомню, что эти переговоры, в результате этих переговоров был подготовлен совместный проект документа, и он был парафирован руководителем Киевской переговорной группы. Но по настоянию Запада был просто выброшен в корзину. Завтра у нас намечен разговор с президентом Турции, господином Эрдоганом. Я хочу попросить его о том, чтобы он предоставил такую возможность проведения переговоров в Турции. Надеюсь, что он подтвердит свое желание способствовать поиску мира на Украине. Мы настроены на серьезные переговоры с Украиной. Их смысл в том, чтобы устранить первопричины конфликта, выйти на установление долгосрочного, прочного мира на историческую перспективу. Не исключаем, что в ходе этих переговоров удастся договориться и о каких-то новых перемириях, о новом прекращении огня, причем о реальном перемирии, которое соблюдалось бы не только Россией, но и украинской стороной. Было бы первым шагом, повторяю, к долгосрочному устойчивому миру, а не прологом к продолжению вооруженного конфликта после довооружения, доукомплектования ВСУ и лихорадочного рытья окопов и новых опорных пунктов. Кому нужен такой мир? Наше предложение, что называется, на столе. Решение сейчас за украинскими властями и их кураторами, которые, руководствуясь, похоже, своими личными политическими амбициями, а не интересами своих народов, хотят продолжать войну с Россией руками украинских националистов. Повторю, Россия готова к переговорам без всяких предварительных условий. Сейчас идут боевые действия, война, а мы предлагаем возобновить переговоры, прерванные не нами. Ну чего здесь плохого? Те, кто действительно хочет мира, не может это не поддержать. При этом хотел бы вновь выразить признательность за посреднические услуги, усилия, направленные на мирное урегулирование украинского кризиса, которые предпринимают наши зарубежные партнеры. А это и Китай, и Бразилия, страны Африки, Ближнего Востока и в последнее время новая администрация Соединенных Штатов Америки. В завершение хотел бы еще раз поблагодарить всех, кто вместе с нами разделил праздничные торжества, посвященные 80-летию победы над нацизмом. Уверен, тот дух солидарности, согласия, который объединял нас в эти дни в Москве и в дальнейшем поможет нам выстраивать плодотворное сотрудничество и партнерство во имя прогресса, безопасности и мира.
This is another video about the Ukraine-Russia latest developments and about the ceasefire talks after the European allies and the coalition of the willing gave Russia an ultimatum for a 30-day ceasefire, or they will be facing increasing sanctions and more weapons to Ukraine, which is going to happen anyways. And Russia's spokesperson Peskov said that it's useless to pressure Moscow into any type of ceasefire, and they feel this type of pressure and all-out basically actions against Russia from EU all the time. So he's basically saying we're used to this type of pressure. It's nothing new for us, and it's not going to push us to go to a 30-day ceasefire. Sunday night, Putin came out in a video that was just shown, and he basically makes a counteroffer. He flips the script on Macron, basically, by saying that if you want a ceasefire, that's fine, let's talk about it. So the coalition of the willing, we're hoping they will accomplish a few things with their witty little ceasefire that they have been pushing for. And Trump is supposedly on board with this 30-day ceasefire because it's the US idea to have a ceasefire. But for Macron and Starmer, there's a little secret behind this 30-day ceasefire. It's really not about the ceasefire. What they want to do now for a few months, and Zelensky has been trying to do a ceasefire, is because there is an increasing pressure from the Russian army on the Ukrainian army, which is increasingly losing ground in Ukraine. That's one reason why they are trying to mount increasing pressure on Russia to do a ceasefire. The other reason that they're trying to have a 30-day ceasefire, that Macron and the UK Starmer they're pushing for, is to get Putin and Russia into a position where supposedly they would outplay Russia and Putin, and they would make him look bad and not wanting peace in the eyes of Trump, and then they would get Trump fully on board and never to and he would basically Trump would never negotiate with Putin anymore. So they would accomplish basically getting Trump on their side for good. And those are the two main reasons why they want to do this ceasefire. And they talk about this in an article on CNN. It's like Macron wrote this article on CNN, and it talks about how there are two aims for this 30-day ceasefire. Now, let's go back again to what Putin said Sunday night in the video as we just watched. Is he's okay to go and do a ceasefire, but he wants to do negotiations with Ukraine directly. Now that's he wants directly to negotiate the ceasefire with Ukraine. The Minsk agreements, I think, were used by the West to have a ceasefire and negotiations, and then that was used to rearm Ukraine, and as Putin says, to feverishly dig trenches on the front line. So those are the reasons for Russia not agreeing to a 30-day ceasefire without negotiations. So Putin basically flipped the script on Macron and the coalition of the willing. And it's kind of funny, how did they think they try like weasels to outsmart Putin? Because their real aim for Macron, for Starmer, is not peace. The real aim for them is to corner Russia, to get US further into a war against Russia, to get US and Trump to supply more money and weapons, because Europe doesn't have the capability to arm Ukraine like US can arm Ukraine. So their main aim is not peace. So this is not a peace effort. And that's why Putin says, if your main effort is peace, then there's no reason why you won't come to Istanbul and continue our negotiations that were cut short in 2022 by the West. So he flipped the script on Macron again, and he's calling them out and saying, hey, if you want ceasefire, come to Istanbul, let's talk about it. That's fine, I want ceasefire too. But if you want a ceasefire to just rearm and then continue the war, why would I give you ceasefire if I'm winning on the battlefield right now? So this is the main narrative happening. And this CNN article, now I'm going back to the reasons why the coalition of these globalists want a ceasefire, a 30-day ceasefire. CNN article basically gives the script. It's almost like this is written by Macron. And it starts with saying that it's a proposal that the Kremlin can neither reject nor accept, but one that may force it into an awkward choice, revealing Russian President Vladimir Putin's true appetite for his brutal war of choice. So they're offering something that he can neither accept or reject, so they can put him in a position where he's in a tough position, so he keeps on fighting, so they can prove to Trump and to the world that he wants to keep on fighting instead of trying to really work for peace. Europe's leaders have grasped the nettle of whether peace talks over Ukraine can lead anywhere meaningful to force Moscow into a pause in violence precisely when it seems to seek to escalate assaults in the summer months ahead. Another reason, another key giveaway why they want this 30-day ceasefire is because they know the Ukrainian front is faltering and Russia is going to have a big summer coming up, and there is going to be big escalation on the front line with the Russian forces taking more grounds in Ukraine. So they want to stop this from happening with their false ceasefire. It also gives Europe's largest army just over 30 hours to prepare for the frontline forces for perhaps a month of tense peace and then hopefully weeks of serious negotiations, so they go with their bullshit stuff. Now, the Kremlin's previous answer of we need to talk about the nuances is not enough. So CNN declares it's not enough anymore. It needs to agree, dispute, or ignore the proposal. It is likely it will, as we have seen in the past, contrive a complex fudge of a response. So CNN goes and predicts the ways that Russia will respond. This, you can't make this up. Who wrote this article? And then it goes on, Russia might agree to pause, but then engineer a spike in violence. It can accuse the Ukrainians of initiating. So they go on to predict, even if Russia agrees to the ceasefire, how it's going to act, how it's going to break that ceasefire. So they're already laying the narrative for the future. So even if Russia agrees to this ceasefire and then Ukraine in reality ends up breaking the ceasefire, they already have the narrative in the news that it was Russia, we told you it was Russia. And then they go on, or to dispute certain elements of the proposal, for instance, fighting back only against Ukrainian forces inside Russia's Kursk or Belgrade regions, causing the White House to question whether they should angrily reject the Kremlin's partial adherence to the truce. Moscow might choose to entirely ignore the proposal and deploy their magical card of a Trump-Putin phone call to reshuffle the deck from which they have been dealt a difficult hand. So they go on to give all kinds of scenarios that this war or the potential 30-day ceasefire might develop into, to make sure the narrative is controlled. This is what they're doing. They're building the future. They're creating the reality. This is how they create reality. Ukraine and its European allies seek clarity from this proposal on whether Putin wants any kind of peace at all. The path they have chosen to get there is in itself unclear and deeply fraught with patterns of Putin's manipulation. Okay, it's like they're building their narrative. Putin manipulates. Macron doesn't manipulate. Listening to the heads of Europe's 5 largest militaries in Kiev Saturday, it appeared most had made their mind up that Putin doesn't want the peace and won't genuinely contemplate a month of it. So peace will only last a month, and Putin doesn't want a month of peace. And in reality, that month of peace, in reality, is a time for Ukraine to rearm. So the narrative is being built by CNN and all these outlets, but Russia flipped the script on France, on UK, and Trump responded to Putin and to Putin's counteroffer to the coalition of the willing 30-day ceasefire by writing on the Truce social that he thinks there's some good things that will come out of this for Russia and Ukraine. So Trump is now flipping to support Putin's counteroffer, and we can see how Europe is becoming a football in between Russia and US. And I've said this, that Europe is going to end up, Ukraine is already on the lunch menu and it's being eaten up, but it's for EU now, for the European nations, and Poland is jumping into the lunch menu now too.